Hi there, welcome to the Contemplate Show. In this show, we try to answer life's trickiest questions in the best way possible to educate, encourage, and inspire individuals to achieve their goals. On this episode, we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, settling in Australia. To discuss this topic, I have Mr. Pete Omotosho. As a project management consultant, a husband, and a father. Thank you, Mr. Pete, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Enoch. I am very excited to be here on your show, the Contemplate Show. I am very positive that we're going to have an amazing time together and also a valuable time, well spent for our audience. So, once again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Pete. So, on today's topic, we want to talk about settling in Australia. We understand when people migrate, it can be a bit challenging and a bit burdensome to, there's that shock. So we'd like you to just talk about how can people really settle in Australia?
That's $1 million question, Enoch. Settling in Australia is a big one. It comes with a big change. Sometimes a lot of people will underestimate the level of change they are about to get into. Some will overestimate it as well. Either way, there is huge change involved. And so when we look at all of these, the life of a migrant is a personal journey, which means the journey of Mr. A will be different, possibly directly opposite to Mr. B. That said, the very first question you want to ask yourself is, why Australia? If you can ask yourself that question and answer it, then it can always help migrants to get over that initial shock that you did mention. It can help them to get over those first impressions that they get when they land, to say, I thought it was going to be like this, and now it is like this. And, those initial challenges, they will come. The answer to that question will help them to actually prepare themselves to surmount those challenges when they come. So, in a nutshell, it is a very, very huge transition, and how the change is navigated, how each and everybody that is looking to settling in Australia, navigate that change is determined by a couple of interesting and good ideas that they need to put together. It will lead to how quickly they can settle down.
Fantastic. So can you elaborate? And what are the steps? How do you come into Australia? How can they adjust with their lifestyle? How can they integrate?
Well, integration. It's a big thing, like I mentioned. So adjusting to life in Australia, the place of cultural fitness is quite very important. So when you talk about cultural fitness, it is non-tangible because there are things or there are ways of life that people are bringing from where they are coming from. And when they land in Australia, they need to adapt to the norms, they need to adapt to the culture in Australia. And it comes with understanding the culture and the social norms of Australia. That said, there are other things as well that comes with cultural fitness. First and foremost, language, and the communication differences. Even for English speakers, the fact that you'll be speaking English 40 years of your life, 25 years of your life, doesn't mean that when you come to Australia, you will not have this trouble understanding how people speak. We have our own lingo, we have our own language in Australia. You hear people talk about Vicky, what is that? You hear people talk about Havo. What is that? And they are just speaking, and you need to find a way to be culturally fit. And cultural fitness talks about how you, as a migrant, how you integrate, how you communicate, how you adjust to the new life, right? how you adjust to the new life. I'm going to really touch it about something very, very quickly. The cost of living is also a shock to quite a number of people, including me when I came. Because when you look at how much you pay for rent, for example, per week versus how much you pay per year in some other countries, it's not even about the cost itself. It is about the fact that it's a weekly rent that you're paying and not over a year annual rent or over 2 years in some areas as well. Financial adjustment, how do people, earn per hour and save per hour such that when they need to spend, they have enough and they can sustain themselves and their family. Housing is a big one as well. Where do you want to stay? As a new migrant, do you want to buy? Do you want to rent? These are so many questions that come into that big bucket or under that big umbrella of cultural fitness. And as a new migrant, it is very important to learn that as quickly as possible. Very important to try to integrate as quickly as possible, because the earlier that is done, the earlier the settling will be.
So to your point, it's a bit difficult to really adapt coming from a new place. Currency is different, language and all that. Now, how do you go about into this integration and trying to get yourself into the system, so you have the cost of things being quite significantly different? So how do you, what are the steps? So, you pay more and put a smile on your face. How do people kind of adapt to the situation?
That's a good question. You see, the place of preparation is very important. The place of preparation is very important. Before you embark on any journey, even from going from your house to the office in the morning, for example, you prepare and then you have your knapsack or your Google Maps to take you in the direction. That is part of preparation. So it is complex, and I'm sorry to say that no matter how much preparation you put in place, there will be surprises. But some preparation is better than no preparation at all. And the opportunity that comes with you adapting to this change will come along the line. So you've prepared, right? The opportunity will come, and then at the end of the day, there will be the success of settling down. And that's what I will say. So the place of preparation is very important. It is really very important when it comes to settling in Australia. Now, the scripts that work for someone will not work for another person. So it's not like, like for like, apple for apple. It is a personal journey. The only thing is you can learn from other people's journey so that you can avoid the mistake that they made. In fact, that's the best way to learn, actually, from other people's pitfalls, so that you don't fall into that. Or you can learn from your own mistake as well, but that is kind of costly as well. So it's something that we just have to get into and also navigate and continuously adapt as we go through each day. But I'll tell you, preparation is the key currency here when you are moving to a new country and you really, really want to settle down. It's very important to prepare.
Yeah, and to your point, you mentioned vision. So you know what you're going to meet there. You know what you're going to do there. Having that preparation kind of alleviates the pain and the shock, even though I like what you said, that some preparation is always better than no preparation. Now, how do people work out, the career? Because let's say you've been back home working for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Just explain that. how can they settle, in this new environment?
All right. So one size does not fit all. That's a little bit controversial, but I'll start from there. I guess from experience and from gathering insight from people that have really settled here in Australia, it is easier for people that are just getting into the workforce to settle fast because they don't have much to lose. If someone has 15 years of experience, like you mentioned, and is looking at, I've done this much where I'm coming from, and the expectation is, the worst case scenario, I'll forgo a fraction of my 15 years of experience. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. Some people, because I don't have the statistics here, but some people will have to start all over again, which means the 15 years of experience will lead to life experiences that they can take into a new environment, to a new career, or even into a new industry whatsoever that they are getting into. The 15 years of experience, I'm using that as a case study, is not a waste, but there is a possibility that such a person or people will start all over again. Now, there are people who are very fortunate that they even get a role even before they land. There are people that get to Australia and in no time they land their role. And there are people who have to do that through sweat and blood because it takes time. But it's something that is starting. It can only get better. That I've told a lot of people that statement. I've made that statement to a lot of people, and indeed, it always gets better. And when you now look at it, people are coming from overseas. And when they land, there is something that is always common. We talk about local experience. And how would people get local experience even before they set their foot in a country? That's absolutely impossible, right? Except for people that have actually done some remote work before they land. Even at that, remember we started from cultural fitness. Remote work and working on ground are quite different things, right? And so the cultural fitness aspect will still need to be learned. So, to navigate the local experience issue, or what I can call the ordeal, there are certain, opportunities to raise your hand as a migrant to volunteer, for example, to do some pro bono work. They are all around. And over time, the local experience injunction will be rolled aside. And of course, one thing that I found very useful and valuable is the role of networking as well in getting a job. The question you want to ask yourself is, who are you having coffee with? Who are you having breakfast with? Who is in your network? Are you using the power of your network? That is very important. In fact,
sorry, I just want to throw in a question right in there. So
Yep.
You've just come into a new place, and you're kind of trying to navigate your way. So I want to know what is in the mind of that person who is saying, you know what, I have this obstacle, I have to pivot. What kind of mindset should that person have to be able to adjust? Or, I want you to really touch on that.
well, the major mindset here is everything is possible. It's a mindset of possibility, right? You are coming into a new country. I want to believe that people that are coming in have some set vision for themselves, and they must have done some groundwork. Those groundwork is what we translate, to a place like Australia, where you are coming with a mindset that I want to connect with 10 people today, for example, and there are platforms like LinkedIn, for example. Say I'm a project manager, right? I'm looking for the top 50 project managers in Melbourne, and I will reach out to 5 of them per day for 5 days this week. That means 25. The mindset that I'm going to put together a personalized message when I'm connecting to these people so that they can see the humanness in me while I connect to them. And I can tell you that quite a high percentage of those 25 or 50 people will reply. And this is a proven, phenomenon for me, because when I landed, that's exactly what I did. And I've moved around a bit in Australia. Every time I go to a new state to settle in, I looked at the people in my industry, in my career, that are doing amazingly well in the new location. And I'm telling them, hi, this is Pete. I'm new in this environment. I would like to connect with you. Are you free for a coffee chat? And I'll say 3 to 4 out of 5 will respond and they are happy to meet. Let me shock you, 70 to 80% of the people I meet will even offer to pay for my coffee when I meet them. So, people don't get this connection because they don't ask. You ask.
So there's something interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry for cutting. There's something interesting you've mentioned. You've talked about preparation before coming.
Yeah.
Actually, first thing you said was the vision. The vision affects the preparation. Preparation affects how you navigate. And the initial question I posed to you was, you're just new. How do you get that network? And then you've touched on that. You've said, you go do the hunting yourself. That is very, very interesting. And it's mind-blowing that people have the tools to actually get what they need. So go ahead.
Yeah. Like you rightly said, people have the tools to get whatever they need. It's in the tips of a finger, right? Even if you ask and people don't respond to you, ask the next person, right? Now, every day of the week, people gather in a professional setting. There are meetups going on around in Australia. Yesterday, I was at a meetup in the city, met people, and then connected with them. New people that I've never met before, right? And those are opportunities. So all these opportunities are here for us to build a professional network that will serve us. Now, word of caution, it is important to build those networks. But what is not really good is to go for the first catch-up and you dump all your problems on this person that you just made it for the first time. That is off. There may not be a second meeting. So, going back to the mindset question that you mentioned or you asked, the mindset of someone that needs something from a stranger is, what can I do for this stranger? And the best analogy I can give to you is, if I meet you on the road, I don't know you from Adam, and I smiled, what will you do?
Smile back.
Exactly. I've seen people who gave something as little as a TEDx talk link or a magazine to people, and then they got a reward of a job. They've got a reward of a very good introduction that led to something amazing. So it doesn't matter what you give. You give and you will receive. So the mindset is, what can I give? You're talking about someone in your meeting, for example. You start talking and you realize the person has a son who likes soccer. And then you used to be a soccer coach. And then you offer 1 or 2 tips to the person. It is valuable to him because someone that is close to him plays soccer. As far as it's known, you have solved a problem or you have given a tip. And he can say, well, I owe you one. And that's how it works.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. My next question for you is, in terms of career, I know you've kind of dabbled into some of them, and you've said, look at what is available and be ready to make that change, which is a big struggle. So how do people navigate the corporate setting in Australia? Because it's quite different from where they are coming from and the work ethic. How do they create that path?
Well, see, it's all about career growth and adaptation, right? So when you get into a new environment, a new office environment, a new workplace, there is a workplace culture which everyone has to learn, right? The ways of working of certain people within an organization. How do they dress? How do they talk? Do they have meetings in an open place, or they go downstairs for coffee meeting, or you have to book a room? When you eventually get a role, it is very, very important to sync with the organizational culture, which is very important. About communication. How do you balance your work with your life? What do you need to do? Do you need to upskill? Those are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself in terms of balancing your work with your life, at the same time syncing with a workplace culture. And this involves it's a complex one. It's a huge one, not complex. It's a huge one because we're looking at what do you need to do? Do you need to upskill? Do you need to get more certification? Do you need to get more short courses? Do you need to, are you just transitioning careers that you need to learn new things? Do you need to learn a few things? Do you need to, in fact, there is a saying that say the illiterate of the 21st century is not a person that cannot read or write. It is that person who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Which means wherever you're coming from, you have the ways of working. You have the way you do things. You have the way you respect the boss when the boss is coming. And here the boss is saying, call me by my first name, right? You're coming from a place probably where if the boss doesn't go home, you're not allowed to stand up. And here the boss is saying, if you feel tired, you can call in sick. Those are new things that people need to think about. Of course, it's all about bringing trust to the team, right? So how do we do all this? How do we bring value to the table? It's what really matters in the workplace. And probably in the next couple of minutes, I'll just share a little bit about what goes on in the mind of a leader when they are about hiring or when they just hire a new employee, things like that. But let me just hold it there because of the question you have.
Fantastic. So I see that for the very first period, what you're doing initially is just trying to learn, observe, adapt. So that's what I'm hearing. Like the initial stage is to really find that sweet spot. And I like what you said about the vision, because your vision is your drive. And then you have to align, you're here in Australia. So you need to kind of adapt, look at the way they work, the way they do their things and bring value. So now, let's say you come with a family. How do you navigate in this family? And then also we can tie that to goals as well. How does your goal kind of knit in, which was what we're going to talk about. So, but we just need to marinate it with, your family and relationship. How can you, juggle all of those together?
So it's like this: transitioning in a new environment or transitioning into a new environment is huge. Transitioning with the family is even much more complex. And the reason is this: everyone that is tied to a new person who is trying to settle in a new environment is also going through their transition. Take, for example, let's use numbers. Mr. A has a spouse and has 2 children. Mr. A is saying, well, I need to try to settle in a new environment called Australia. Let's call his spouse Mrs. A. is saying, well, I've left everything behind and I'm trying also to settle down. Master Hay, the first son, is saying, well, I left my friends and my hobbies behind and I'm trying to settle in a strange land. And Miss B or Miss A is also saying the same thing. So you're not only trying to settle yourself in, you're also helping other people to settle in as well. The faster they settle in, the faster you settle in as well. Which means the fact that 1 of 4 are settled down does not really mean everything is settled. Now, this is what we find out. We find out that children settle faster than adults, especially if they come at a very younger age. And this is because they're like, oh, cool, I've missed my friend, but this is a new environment. I'll make more new friends. I'll use the environment to drive my new ideas, my new hobbies and stuff like that. And before you know it, they start mingling, right? The adults are also really trying so hard to leave everything behind and settle themselves in. So, going back to my first analogy, Mr. A needs to look for Master A and Master B to make sure that settle in and they truly settle in, because there are a lot of assumptions that can actually go in. Oh, someone is smiling, someone is riding the bicycle on the street. Does it really equate to settling in? You need to fill in the gap. And then Mrs. the spouse as well. How much of the settling are they getting? Are they settling in the new environment, in the new home, in the job as well? What do they have to do? All of these questions will really point to the fact, or to the frequency, or what's the word I'm going to how fast? Yeah, that's the word. How fast they can actually settle in. So key things before I even really keep quiet for the next question is, you need to help your children adjust to a new school and to a new school system as well, right? You need to support the spouse or partner also in their career transition. You need to manage everybody holistically when it comes to their own expectations, when it comes to dealing with the cultural shock as well. And everybody needs to work together and share ideas together. So that is that about, creating stability and support from the family front. Of course, there is this extension of the financial planning as well, which is another ballgame eventually when it comes to family.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I see that a lot of the burden, it will be on the parents. Can you touch on how to navigate the pressure? So these kids come in, you're coming with your spouse, the instant bill, you have to pay, the bills you have to pay, so it can quickly add up. How can these individuals manage the pressure? Keeping an eye on the vision, and then also supporting,
So obviously we live in an environment, or we live in a time of rapid change, right? And financial planning for long-term security is quite very important to your question, right? Budgeting is quite important for a new migrant. How much do we have before we landed? How much is coming in? And how much is going out? If the pipe of money in savings or money that is coming in is small and the expenditure is bigger, that's going to be chaotic at some point. So
now that is the place where some people find themselves in, because like you said, the cultural shock. Now all of a sudden they're paying 3-4 times of what they would have paid for where they're coming from. Now with that, how can they manage where the bills is more than the income? How can they navigate that and still keep their eye on the ball?
Yeah, I'm just going to call it a spade a spade. One of the things we mentioned earlier on is the place of planning. Who will want to build a house and not count the cost? Right. Before people set their feet in Australia, for example, how much, what is the cost? What is the high cost of the environment? How high is the cost of this new environment? How much is the cheapest accommodation? What is the mode of transportation? Do I need to buy a car, or can I be serviced by other mode of transportation, train, bus, trams, whatever it is? Count the cost. The place of preparation is very, very important. Now, let's say people land, and by their calculation, they can support themselves for 6 months. But 6 months has passed, and they cannot also get that role that they're looking for, and the money is depreciating. Now, just for our conversation, I am assuming that we are really looking at residents of Australia, which means they need to also understand the government support that is available. There are family benefits, there are childcare subsidies that could support family until they get on their feet. Now, this is why the support is there. And this is the mindset of an average Aussie. The mindset is the mindset of giving back. Especially when people eventually settle down. People are going to pay tax, and it's going to help people that are coming in. Which means, if you get government support at some point, somebody has paid it forward. That's the word. Somebody has paid it forward. When you eventually settle down, you are going to pay it forward for someone that actually needs it. Because some people are actually paying it off. And for those people, they need the soft landing, they need the cushioning, which these government support can give at some point of their life or they're settling down. But again, nothing goes beyond, nothing beats good preparation and the mindset that it can only get better. So, the storming phase is the most terrible time when people are trying to navigate themselves. What is important is to spend as little time in that storming phase before they begin to normalize, or before they move to that norming stage. And then when they get to that norming stage, it can only get better. I keep saying that it can only get better because this land is a good land that supports people. Australia is a good land. I'll post it.
Fantastic. I mean, you've touched on a lot of things in terms of resilience and vision, and being able to be open to adjust when necessary, understanding the work environment that is different from where you're coming from, and there'll be a few discernment, just trying to kind of look at how things are done, and then you follow so there's a proper integration. And when we come back from this break, we'll talk about how to integrate into the community. We'll take a little break and we'll come back. Don't go away. All right, we're back from the break. We've been talking to our guests on how to settle in Australia. We touched on a whole lot, and we'll continue to get more insight on how to settle in Australia. Mr. Pete, please, can you talk to us on the market in Australia and trends and the way things are moving, and how can people integrate into the fast changing market?
Well, the market is fast changing, like you rightly mentioned, Enoch. And, I had a quote earlier on that said the illiterate of the 21st century is not one who cannot read or write, but one who cannot learn, right? Unlearn and relearn. And this is where it comes in here. The market is always evolving, which means what solved yesterday's problem may suddenly become obsolete today. And so we need to continue to evolve. Now, in this market, people are talking about artificial intelligence before people can even fully wrap their head around AI. Then we're talking about generative AI, which is the next level. And then we are like, okay, what is this Gen AI? And then we're talking about agentic AI. And before you wake up tomorrow, there will be something else. So it is very imperative for us to continuously improve ourselves, especially for people who would like to settle in Australia. And I have very good, examples, personal examples, people that I know in my community, my mentees, who have gone through this journey of continuous improvement, and they have results to show for it. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what is going to solve the problem of tomorrow? For example, almost every company that provides service to us have some form of cyber issues and threat. And so they need people to solve this problem, to be one step ahead of the bad guys in cyber world. What can I do? The question you want to ask yourself is, what can I do to be a cybersecurity analyst by the end of 2025? What can I do to be a artificial intelligence advisor before the end of 2025? What can I do in the green energy space? Because everybody is talking about, we want to move away from, energy sources that are polluted the air. We want to go to net zero. What can I do? And so, if this is the way, then you need to follow the way as well. And so the market is volatile. And so we need to actually definitely prepare and continuously evolve, continue to evolve. And that is how we can really fit into this market. So, practical example, personal example for me, right? I graduated my first degree in September, long time ago. So every September, I'm asking myself, what is my learning calendar for the next year? What is it going to be like? So with regularity, since 2008, I've always added something to my CV. Either it's a short course, it's a degree, it's a certification, and everything is in an upcoming, or what we can call emerging technology. So people can actually have, how we have a financial calendar, financial year, July to June. Some people have marital years, anniversary. You need to have your learning calendar as well. So that you can actually solve or be relevant to the future. And I can give you certain examples. So you remember when computers came, people really said, no, I love these typewriters. I know people who were secretaries in those days. They said, no, we will not. But the new innovation pushed them aside. The smart ones went 3 months word processing course to learn MS Word, and then they started using computer and they learned on the job. The ones that did not want to, evolve, they went away, right? When we had, other, ideas come as well. When now is the world of AI, for example, you at least want to know how it works, what it does, and how it will evolve. Because sometime in the future, it is what you know about this innovation that is affecting the marketplace that will make you relevant for the market of tomorrow. You can't pour from an empty glass. So you have to fill your glass and you have to continually fill it so that you can pour for it. I'll pause there for now.
Thank you so much. I've seen that you've touched on some of the questions that I had to ask. I just have 2 more questions before we let you go. What role does discipline play in achieving that vision that you have, and also how does it tie into integrating with the community?
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good question. Discipline. Discipline is really key. Every time we make choices, every single time, the choice that both of us made to have this conversation is a choice. There are a million and other places we could be. And the discipline to say, yeah, we have to do it. Yeah, we have to contend with other things as well. So also, someone who is looking at settling in Australia need to have this huge discipline. For example, what do I want to do? The question could be, what do I want to be by the end of 2025 in my career? Do I have the discipline to study? Do I have the discipline to network? Do I have the discipline to make sure that my LinkedIn profile is clean so that I can connect and I can attract those people? And then the key point to your question is the community. Do I have the discipline to find the right people in the community? Because you see, the community is more like your support system. If you navigate towards the right people in the community, you are going to build the right support system. If you unfortunately navigate towards the not so good, it's like, when we start learning computer, garbage in, garbage out. That's what it's going to be like. So it is very imperative to kind of join a cultural or a local community group, right? So that you can have people around you. Of course, whether we like it or not, most of us or most people, when they migrate, that loneliness, that feel of loneliness is always there. And the community is that instrument that fill that gap of loneliness. For example, if you are a person of faith, you might consider joining a faith-based community. For example, you want to join the church, you want to join the mosque, or whatever your faith is. You might want to join, a special interest community, and there are 1,000,001 of them around us. If you go online and check meetups, there are groups that talks about so many things. There are the Men Shared for men. There are, other groups of special interest that really that you can join. But in joining as well, it is quite important to be a law-abiding person in the society, right? So there are groups that are law-abiding and there are groups that you want to avoid. So it is very, very important to look at the vision of the group you are looking at joining. Who is there? Do they speak the kind of language I want to learn? Do they, when I say language, do they act the way an true Australian will behave? Are they behaving that way? Are they law-abiding? Are they contributing to the success of the land? Are they adding value? If they do, by all means join and add your quota to it. Now, one more thing before I pause a little bit is the importance of friendship, the importance of social connections. These are very, very good, very, very important for your well-being as someone who is trying to settle. Let's say, for example, it's Australian Day, January 26th. For people that really enjoy the mateship in Australia, it's the people that have those connections. There are massive opportunities to connect. But if you don't have friends, if you don't have social connections to people, that loneliness will still be there. So it is quite important to look after yourself, your well-being, your mental health. And this is where friendship comes in. This is where social connections comes in. As a rule of thumb for me, public holiday is a good opportunity to connect with friends and acquaintances. And I don't miss a beat. I try to do that. Weekends is a golden opportunity. I'll say something as well. As a parent as well, it is quite important to also help your children bond. And the good thing is children They have this sporting activity. They have these dancing activities that they go to. And as a parent, you are the Uber driver, so to say. And so when you go there, you meet other parents who are also their so-called Uber drivers. Connect with them. And then you collectively cheer the children to winning or to supporting them in their sporting activity. So these are the kind of support that you can find in the community. Finding your people, finding people that tick, that align with you, so that you can find that social support. You can create that social support system for yourself. It's very important. Very, very.
Oh, fantastic. Like you've really touched on a lot of things. One last question we have for you before we leave you to go, because I know you're really busy. What would you say to people who are actually struggling, and they just need something that can remind them of why they migrated in the first place?
I'll give you a couple of things, not just one thing. And I'll do that as quick as possible. For someone who is struggling to settle down or who is in the process of settling down, the very first thing I'm going to say is learn from other people's lessons, right? I think I mentioned earlier on, you can either learn from other people or you can learn from your own mistakes as well. So the biggest source of learning is other people, right? Ask question. It's very important. One of the free resources available is people experience. It is experiential and they are freely given, but you need to ask. Then the second thing I'm going to say is in the form of question. Who are you having coffee with? Who are you having lunch with? Who constitute your network? Start building that network, and I've mentioned how to do that earlier on. And I will also say that there is something they call the 6 degrees of separation, right? Which means technically, among other things, that within the idea is that within the next 6 or fewer people that are connected, you can find every answer. So if I need something, if I talk to 6 people in my network, there is a high tendency that the 6th person will have the answer for me or know someone who can have an answer for me. It's a proven truth. I've tried it so many times. So if I have a question to answer, I make a list of people and I'll give a call. And people will say, I can do it or I can do it for you. So let's look at that. And just one advice: balance career, balance family, and balance the community. It's very important. People really put a lot of effort in their career and their family suffer, or they abandon the community, and when they need them the most, when they are 65, 70, they are not there, right? So you need to balance your career, balance with the family, and also the community. And one last tip: it can only get better. It can only get better, and you will thrive. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Pete. This was a very interesting session because you took us on a journey. You talked about vision, you talked about adaptation, you talked about strategy, how to work in that corporate environment. You also gave us strategies for networking, how to get that network, which was the tricky. When you were talking, I was like, so how do these people get this network? But you really came in strong with tips and ways people can actually build a network. And then we went further with abiding by the law, which is very, for me, is one big thing, that you are doing the right thing and at every point in time, being disciplined, having the right people around you all the time. And that will help shape you and move you towards your vision. And he also talked about setting things and not being afraid to step out in the course of this conversation and, try new things and all that. So We really, really appreciate you for taking our time on this episode to talk to us. And what we normally do when we come to the end of the show is give us your final word and also recommend 3 books that you would like our viewers to read.
All right, I think I'll just go straight to the books. The final word will just be like, be yourself. And then I think I mentioned this earlier on. If you anybody watching this want to take anything out of this conversation today, is it can only get better. I've told 1,000,001 people that need to hear it before today, and I'm telling everyone that will listen or that will watch this that it can only get better. So just continue, and it can only get better. I've got some books to share, like you have asked me, and I guess because we are really talking about settling in Australia and the financial side of things is very important, I've got this book that I'm going to really just share. I've read it a couple of times. It's The Baffled Investor. It actually curated the Australian environment, so it's a very good read for people. And also, I did mention something about planning, right? So this is a book that I have read. As a matter of fact, I read it every year and almost twice a year as well. So it's called a 12-week year. It is just a book that helps us get more done in 12 weeks than others do in 12 months. Well, it's just very good book anyway. If it works for you, it's from Brian Moran, and it's a very, very good book as well. And lastly, when you eventually get that role, when you eventually settle in that role, the very first 90 days matters, right? What is going to happen in that first 90 days? Currently, I'm reading it and I'm almost done rereading it. You can see, read it a couple of times. So this book is by Michael D. Watkins. It's for people that really want to settle in and they want to know what they will achieve in the first 90 days in a new role, or probably a leadership role. So this is a very good read as well. So those are the 3 books I'll recommend to
Thank you so much, Mr. Pete. It's been a very, very nice session we've had on this episode where you touched on a lot of things. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like us to treat any topic in the coming future episodes, please just put it in the comment section. And that'll be all from me today. Thank you, Mr. Pete, for joining us on this episode. I am your host, Enoch Ogi. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.